What is going on, everyone? Phil here. Welcome to DSPReacts, my first review in a while. And being that today is the release day of Street Fighter 6 worldwide, I felt that we should do something a little special for its release and review an oldie but a goodie. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the 1994 full-length animated feature Street Fighter 2, the movie. No, not the live-action movie starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Kylie Minogue. We're talking about the animated feature that essentially is anime, but no one called it anime back then. Seriously, in 1994, I don't know a single person who said, oh yeah, the anime movie. Everyone just said it was the animated Street Fighter movie. Now, this very much is a full-length feature. It is an hour and 40 minutes long, which is pretty much just as long as any other major motion picture. It's got great art quality. It's got a licensed soundtrack, including Alice in Chains. It's got great stuff to it. It's really well done. Very high production quality. And it's weird because at this time, during the 1990s, there were other, animated films that were being made of video game franchises that were kind of like, half-assed efforts. Not great quality. You could tell low budget and low running time. But in this case, this very much was a full-length movie. If you're a fan of Street Fighter and you've basically been into Street Fighter over the last 15, 20 years, and you've never seen this movie, you might say, dude, it's from 1994. It's like 29 years old. There's no way that this movie could be any good. You would be wrong. This is actually one of the best, I would say, adaptations of a video game like this that's ever been done. Although, admittedly, the plot doesn't necessarily make full sense because, let's be honest, a video game where everyone's just beating each other up in the streets doesn't really make much sense anyway, right? But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the Street Fighter 2 animated movie. So, the basic plot synopsis is this. M. Bison is the leader of Shadow Law. That's right, it's not called Shadaloo in this movie, it's actually called Shadow Law. And this is an international terrorist organization that deals in drugs and guns and all kinds of things. Interpol, as well as other international crime, takedown organizations are trying to stop this guy from basically, being this big kind of a dictator in the world. So basically what he's doing is he's going around the world and he's trying to recruit fighters to become his mercenaries and or kind of like his henchmen. Why he thinks recruiting hand-to-hand fighters rather than like trained military would benefit Shadow Law better, I have no idea. It's never really explained, but I mean that's always been the plot of Street Fighter 2, so they're going with it. So right at the beginning of the movie, he recruits Balrog, Vega, and Sagat. Right at the beginning of the movie, there's a fight between Ryu and Sagat, and it's actually their fight from when Sagat got the scar on his chest when Ryu has a Shoryuken on his chest. Great animation, by the way. Tons of frames of animation. It's not one of those choppy ones. All the characters look buff and representative of how they would look in real life. It's not one of those, they look skinny or they look kind of cartoony. Very much going for a more realistic animated tone in this movie. And actually, the scene in this movie was so good of Ryu fighting Sagat, they turned that into the intro scene of one of the Street Fighter Alpha games later on, which was really cool that they did that. Anyway, so after that epic fight, basically the plot is Bison's trying to recruit more people, and he's going all around the world trying to find the best fighters. Well, you got Guile, whose former, Air Force buddy Charlie was murdered by M. Bison, and you got Chun-Li, who's now an agent for Interpol, who her father was murdered by M. Bison, and the two of them meet up and team up in order to try to thwart Bison's plans. What they're going to do is they're going to start going all around the world warning warriors who are known for like street fighting that Bison's after them. So as they're doing this, for example, the first person they run into is DJ, and DJ actually is just kind of doing a street fight, and they run into him and they warn him, and then all of a sudden all these cyborgs show up, and it's basically Bison's cyborg army. And they realize, oh, look, these are the guys. They're all spies. They look human, but they're not. And DJ's like, well, thanks for telling me, and I'll have to keep an eye out or whatever. But it's funny because there's a lot of characters in the movie that aren't really necessarily a big part, but they wanted them to have bit roles, so at least the entire cast of Street Fighter 2 is in it, including the original 8 World Warriors, so Ryu, Ken, Honda, Blanca, Zangief, Guile, Chun-Li, Dalsim. But then you've got the 4 boss characters, Bison, Balrog, Vega, Sagat, and then, yes, even the 4 new challenger characters that came in Super Street Fighter 2. So Cammy, T-Hawk, DJ, and Fei Long. They're all in the movie, but a lot of them have bit roles. DJ, in this case, almost no role. Just that one scene with Guile and Chun-Li warning him about Bison, and literally he never shows up ever again and has no bearing on the story. A lot of other things happen, like, for example, Ryu's traveling the world. He's a world warrior, but he's a vagabond, essentially. He has no home. He just travels all around training, and he stumbles upon street fights. So he stumbles upon a club where A bunch of guys are fighting in a ring, and these other people kind of like throw him in and force him to fight. He beats the crap out of the guy with a headbutt. So then Fei Long shows up out of nowhere. He's supposed to be filming a movie, but decides he wants to step into the ring with Ryu, and they have a pretty epic fight. Ryu ends up winning, but it's pretty cool because Fei Long uses all the moves of Bruce Lee. And I believe, and don't quote me on this, I believe Fei Long is voiced by Bryan Cranston in this movie. That's what it said on IMDb anyway. Maybe they're wrong, but that's what it said. Anyway, so there's an epic fight between Ryu and Fei Long, and then after that, Fei Long is never in the movie again. And that's kind of what a lot of this is. There's a street fight between Dalsim and E Honda. Dalsim's then completely out of the movie after that. There's a random pit fight between Zangief and Blanca that's being staged by like rich people that Bison is entertaining. And after their fight, they're never seen again. They have nothing to do with the plot. Essentially, the plot focuses around Guile and Chun-Li trying to take down Bison, and Ryu and Ken trying to avoid Bison, who's trying to hunt them down and recruit them to Shadow Law. And that's really the whole movie. Like, that's the plot of the entire thing, okay? There's some fun action scenes. There's, scenes where, like, T-Hawk jumps Ken and tries to beat him up because Ken is essentially the world champion right now in street fighting. So, there's little in between fights there. But eventually what happens is Bison kidnaps Ken. Bison brainwashes Ken and turns him into Violent Ken. Yes, that same character that was in future video games actually had his debut in the 1994 Street Fighter II movie. This is where the original character came from, okay? So the big culmination of the movie essentially is that Bison is hunting down Ryu. He finally finds him, and he has Ken fight Ryu, and then when Ryu is weakened, he wants to recruit Ryu and brainwash him and maybe even use Ryu as a new host body for himself. For those who don't know, M. Bison is not really the person that he is in body. He's this soul, this spirit that jumps from body to body and basically absorbs the abilities of whatever body he's inhabiting. So seeing that Ryu is so powerful, obviously he wants to take him out. But basically, Guile and Chun-Li show up at the same time. There's this all these fights, like Guile ends up fighting Bison. Chun-Li, at one point, fights Vega, and they have this crazy fight in an apartment. It's actually bloody and gory, because Vega has his claws, and it's playing this crazy rock song when it's happening. It's probably a crazy fight you probably never would expect from a movie like this. It's actually very bloody. She gets all cut up and everything, but has a pretty epic end. I won't spoil it, okay? But at the end, it's like Guile, Bison are fighting, Ryu and Ken are fighting, and then E Honda and Balrog fight, and then there's like 3 fights going on at once, pretty epic. Then they're kind of crossover, so then now it's Ryu and Ken versus Bison, and then there's a big resolution at the end. But the weird thing about the movie is there's another subplot. Interpol is attacking Shadow Law, and it's funny because it's never addressed. Like, Interpol says, yeah, we're taking over the base now, we're attacking Bison, but Bison's not there. Bison's out with Ken fighting Ryu. It's like Bison's not even home to defend his base. Was he giving it up, or did he forget? You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. What's more important, recruiting Ryu or running your international terrorism organization that's falling apart because you left while Interpol was attacking it? It's pretty weird. It is. It's a pretty weird thing. But overall, if you like combat, if you like good animation, if you like a kickin' soundtrack from the 90s, like, this movie is happening. It's really good. It's an hour and 40 minutes that for the most part flies by. There's a few slow-moving scenes where Ryu's posing on a mountaintop, and it's like supposed to be artistic that he's fighting or whatever, or training. But for the most part, it's a really great movie. I loved this movie in the 1990s. I bought it on VHS because I loved it so much, and I watched the shit out of it in the early 90s when Street Fighter II was at its height of popularity. What's funny is when the live-action movie came out, a lot of people forgot about this. And on top of that, other movies like the Street Fighter Alpha movie and other things came out later that kind of overshadowed it. But this is the best one, in my opinion. Like, I think this is actually one of the best, video game adaptation movies. It's actually one of the best animated movies I've probably ever seen. I mean, the art's on par with everything you would see at that time. Dragon Ball and everything. It's literally on par with that. So don't pass it up because it's 29 years old. Don't think, oh, it's crappy because it's old. No, it's actually really good. I strongly recommend you give it a look. I watched it on Amazon Prime Video, and it's available on there now if you're a Prime Video subscriber, but maybe you can get it by other means. If you didn't see it yet, and now if you're getting into Street Fighter 6 that just released, this is a great movie to watch that kind of gets you in the mood for fighting games. So, Street Fighter 2, the animated movie, absolutely great movie. I love it. I hope you'll give it a look, and I hope you enjoyed my review. Thanks for watching DSP Reacts, and I'll see you guys soon. This month, I'm actually going to be reviewing a lot of retro movies, so I hope that you're down for that. See you later, guys, and thanks for watching.